Can you actually save money by gardening? This is a question that I asked myself at the beginning of last year when I was starting my first garden. And it was somewhat of a reaction to various memes or videos that I've seen online of people talking about spending all this money and taking all the time to water and care for a tomato plant, and then at the end of the growing season they get one tomato and it's like a $24 tomato. So I had to ask myself, is growing vegetables and taking all the time, energy, and resources, is it worth it from an economic standpoint? Well, to answer that question, I tracked everything. Every dollar that we spent to build the garden that I built last year, and also weighed all of the produce as it came into our house and kept track of everything for an entire year so I could be able to answer this question for myself. So I'm going to break down the numbers and I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can, because this is actually the second time that I'm shooting this, because the first time I realized that I talked too much and in too much detail. So I'm going to try to go a little bit high level, at least on the purchases of everything and those individual prices, but I will include links down below to everything that I'm talking about. Starting off for my garden, the fence. I had to build a fence around my garden because I wanted to keep out the rabbits, and we've got a groundhog. So for that fence, the total was $302.29. And for that, there was 22 by 4s, 4 by 4s, the fencing material, and then hardware cloth that I used on the gates that I built. So that was $302.29. The next thing would be my raised beds. My garden is mostly comprised of raised beds, and for the raised beds I spent $1,169.49. So of that total were the 24 2x12s, the screws, tung oil, and raw linseed oil to treat a few of them, running an experiment there. Now topsoil and compost. Now both of these I got delivered in bulk. A dump truck came and dropped them off. Topsoil, spent $314 there, and for compost, $483, but it was way cheaper going that route than buying bags to try to fill all of these raised beds. It would have cost way more money if I had gone that route. So if you're filling up raised beds and you have a place locally where you can get bulk soil, go that route. So that was everything for the raised beds. Again, $1,169.49. The next thing that I spent money on were all the seeds and plants. And I only spent, and I say only because I spent way much more money this year because I'm expanding my garden and trying out a lot more new things. I made a video about that, which I'll link up above. Now for seeds, last year I spent $111.32, and that was from Baker Creek and My Gardener and a few other companies there. So $111.32 for my seeds. And then seed starting, I bought all these seeds and I needed a place to start them. For my seed starting setup, which I kind of went all out with, was $559.53. So that was food trays to put soil blocks on, a large soil blocker, a micro soil blocker, soil block inserts to change out the little size divot that it makes in the soil block. I got a big pack of 3.5-inch pots, a wire shelf, heat mats, lights, grow hangers, or lights hangers for those lights, a surge protector that had a timer so I could time everything and turn the lights on and off without me having to do it. So all of that stuff to get a pretty nice setup for seed starting in your house. That was $559.53. If you're just starting off gardening, you do not need to get all the same stuff that I did. I knew, even though this was my first year gardening, that I was going to be gardening for many more years to come, that this was essentially going to turn into my personality. So I went all out and got a very nice setup, nice-ish setup for starting my plants. But you can reuse containers that you already have, milk jugs, takeout containers. You will need a light. Sunlight isn't going to be enough just coming in through the window, so you're going to need some supplemental light. Maybe a heat mat, but you can definitely do it a lot cheaper than $559. So next on the list, I have some soil amendments. I spent $41.74 on that for things like fertilizer, blood meal, some iron granules because I had an issue with my pH way too high, which greatly impacted my yield, which we'll get into shortly. Now, plant supports to hold my plants up and trellis and various things. Spent $237.99 on plant supports. And that's things like tomato clips, tomato twine, concrete wire, which I made tomato cages that worked out really well. The same cages that I grew up using. Made a whole video about making those. One of the best ways to do tomatoes, definitely determinate tomatoes. I got 2 cattle panels, T-posts, PVC tees, and conduit to make a trellis, and then I got some bamboo, which I probably overpaid for at Home Depot. So that was everything for plant supports. Again, $237.99 for my plant supports. Oh, some row covers. So it was $90.71 for some insect netting, wire to make hoops, a agricultural fabric called Agribon AG30, stakes, shade cloth. So that was my row cover. The next thing, tools. Now, I had some tools already, some tools that my dad gave me for free that he had bought at garage sales. So you can go to garage sales and thrift stores, estate sales, and pick up some of these things for way cheaper. You may already have some of these things. This was a brand new house that we were moving into, so we didn't have a lot of stuff, so I had to buy some things, but I was also very fortunate to have my dad to give me a lot of stuff for free. But the things that we did buy, a garden dibbler, which was useless, hose, 2 hoses, a sprayer, a hori-hori, which is my favorite garden tool, a hard rake, and a pitchfork. And those tools were $167.43. And then I think I've got one more category. It's my miscellaneous category. It's got 2 things in it for $44.99. And that was some grow bags that I got. They didn't really fit in either category. And then wood chips. Wood chips for all of my rows. And we went through Chip Drop, which is a company, organization, something that puts you in contact with local arborists who, as they're cutting down trees, doing tree trimming, and they make all these wood chips. If they didn't have somewhere to drop them off at other residents, like our house, they would have to take them to the dump and pay to have them disposed of. So you can give a tip, which greatly increases your odds of an arborist like reaching out with you, connecting with you, and dropping off stuff. And when they came to our house, they said, how much wood chips do you want? I said, well, how many wood chips can you give us? They ended up dropping off 10 dump trucks worth of wood chips. We're still working our way through them, but a lot of them are starting to turn into mulch. So that was $20 well spent. So all of that for the garden, for the total, was $2,725.49. A lot of money for investing in a backyard garden. You could definitely go way more expensive if you bought all those like big metal planters. So this is definitely not the most expensive, but you could also do it much cheaper than this and also start out gradually. I built a pretty large garden for my first year, so you don't have to start as big as I did, but that was $2,725.49. That's how much I spent. Now, how much produce did I bring in? Now for these values, I weighed everything, but then I had to turn that weight into a dollar value. And I went a few ways about this. So I am in Kentucky, and the University of Kentucky does track prices at farmers markets, but they don't do all the farmers markets. They don't do all counties. So I used some data from there to try to give a good representation of what it would cost at a farmer's market. Because I'm not going to go to Walmart and do just your regular run-of-the-mill produce and compare it to what I was growing in my garden. Because my garden didn't have any pesticides. It's not labeled organic, but it's just as good as organic, if not better. So high quality food that I was producing, so it's a premium. And that's what you have to think about when you're trying to compare. You want to compare apples to apples, not apples to radiators. You want something that it's comparable. So you can't look at it that, comparing it to like cheap ingredients and like grocery store stuff and like trying to replace, frozen pizzas, which I do love a frozen pizza. So trying to compare it to comparable things. So let me get into those numbers. 3.2 pounds of beets, and that was $12.81 worth. Bok choy only grew $2.73, so not a whole lot. Cabbage, I thought my cabbage did pretty well, but it only came out to being $14.78 worth of cabbage. Carrots, still haven't figured out how to grow carrots. A measly 92 cents worth of carrots. So I'm trying to figure out carrots this year and beets this year. Those are the two main things. Corn, only $9.25, but corn was kind of an afterthought in my garden. Didn't grow enough, so had poor pollination. I knew it was gonna happen. So $9.25 for corn. Cucumbers, $13.13. Garlic, $16.34 off just a relatively small little patch. Green beans also did horribly, only $3.78. Now here comes my first big chunk of money. Basil, $260.31. Fresh herbs are expensive at the grocery store, but we love them. And at first I saw this number and it's like, man, this feels like, am I inflating these numbers? I don't think so. When we lived in Washington, D.C., which is where we lived before we moved to Kentucky, we went to the farmer's market every single week. That's where almost all of our produce came from. And we typically bought a big giant bunch of basil that would cost about $5. So we did that for weeks, for months. So we may have spent more than $200 on basil because we really love pesto. So we put a lot of pesto up. I'm going to be growing even more basil next year because we really like pesto. So fresh herbs, like my rosemary, $26.28 worth of rosemary. In the interest of time, I'm going to speed this portion up, but you can hit pause if you want to see the individual dollar amounts for the crops listed. Tomatoes. So I got a few different categories of tomato. This is my generic tomato category, $82.72. My one cherry tomato, only $8.44, because that's listed as the compost cherry tomato. I had too many tomatoes to plant anywhere, so I threw some of my extras just in my compost pile. They actually did pretty well. They grew $8.44 worth, but not as good as my Roma tomatoes, which I grew 56 pounds worth for $335.90 worth of those. I'm going to double or triple how many Romas I grow this year because all those got turned into salsa and tomato sauce that we're working our way through in the winter. Sun Gold tomatoes, $17.73. And lastly, turnips. I grew $18.77 worth of turnips. The total for that was $1,264.43. So for a total loss of $1,461.06. I'm okay with that. My garden did not do well this year for a few reasons. One, the compost that I got wasn't fully matured. I think a lot of nitrogen was still locked up. It was pretty woody, so it wasn't the best growing medium. So I'm working on amending that and making that better this year. My pH was too high, so the nutrients that were there, plants struggled to uptake them. We had first too much rain and then too little rain. So I'm working out some irrigation and some different things to get that a little bit better. So I think my garden this year in that plot is going to be way better and produce a whole lot more. So these numbers are going to be better this year. And that's if I just stayed with that garden plot. Because I have put all of the initial capital investment, I don't have to build another fence. I don't have to build more raised beds. I'm set there. So if I was just to grow in that same area again this year, I calculated that I would only need $152.65 because I have some of the soil amendments left over. I have seeds left over. So buying new seeds and some additional soil amendments, I could plant out that same garden area for only $152.65. And if you think of this like a business, it's a weird business where there's a customer of one, it's you and your family, but most businesses lose money their first year, even their second year. They're not profitable until 18 or 24 months in. So it makes sense. You have to put all this initial investment for things that you can reuse. Most of the stuff that I purchased, I can reuse. Now I can't reuse the seeds that I sowed, but I saved a lot of seeds. So if you're getting things that are heirloom vegetables that you can save seeds from, that they're not going to, cross-pollinate and breed all weird like a squash or something, you can save those seeds. Now you don't have to buy them again. So if you have that initial capital investment, are you going to save money on your grocery bill your first year? I don't know. Will you save money eventually? I think so, yes. if you're someone who's in the comments and saying, you did not calculate all the hours that you spent on that garden. Well, yeah, you're right. I didn't. Because I enjoyed it. You know, what else would I be doing with my time? Sitting around watching Netflix? Like, it was enjoyable. I like gardening. I like being outside. So I don't see that as a cost for me. Like, it's a hobby, it's a free time, it's enjoyment. So I didn't calculate my cost. And so, yeah, you're right, I didn't bring it in there, but I don't think you need to if it's something that you enjoy doing. If you don't like gardening, don't grow a garden to save money. Do something else. There are other ways to save money. If like this is your goal, probably not the best thing if you don't also enjoy gardening. So that's the video. What do you think? Do you think it's worth it from an economic standpoint to grow your own food? I think so, yes. The numbers disagree on year one, but I am putting in the foundation of a garden that is going to produce for years to come. My name is Tyler Lloyd. I've tried to make this video as succinct as possible, so I'm not going to say any more. Thank you very much for watching. See you later. Bye.